Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and welcome to Learning About VisualBasic.net. Well, in this episode, we're going to look at creating a Microsoft Access database that we're going to use later in our other projects. But first of all, we need to create a database, and if you're new to Microsoft Access, you might not be familiar about how to create a database. So we're going to look at that and do that in this exercise. And after you get done with that, then we'll use that database later on for our working with VisualBasic.net. So let's first of all take a look at our documentation. And our documentation for this one is out at pastebin.com. And there you'll see the definitions for the Microsoft Access database we're going to be making. And also the videos for this series and others are out at youtube.com/user/Bolen Presents. Now let's take a look at what is the difference between a Microsoft Access database versus a Microsoft SQL database, and particularly the Microsoft SQL Express database. Now the SQL Express database is a free version, so you do not have to pay for it, and you can do a lot of things with it, and I prefer it. It gives me a smaller environment to work with on my local machine, but it is the same thing as the full version that you would have if you had a full Microsoft SQL Server installed. Also, we have something a little bit newer in development as well, is what's called the local DB. And we'll see that as well. We'll work with that as we proceed through these series of videos. But let's take a look at how it varies from Microsoft Access, because a lot of people like Microsoft Access. They feel comfortable with it. But I would like to point out there are some differences, and that is the area where it becomes a problem for a lot of people, and also a limitation of Microsoft Access over others. Now let's take a look. First of all, the language, the relational database language that we use in SQL Express, SQL Server, and also in the local DB is transactional SQL, and it's a proprietary one for Microsoft, but it follows the standards of SQL 92. Whereas the Microsoft Access uses an older version of ANSI 89, and there are differences, and because of that, a lot of times the queries are a little bit different, and some of the wildcards that you use with your queries in the like clause of a SQL query are different wildcards. So this is one area that is a problem area for a lot of people as they try to keep separate the differences between the two. The database size is another thing. Microsoft Access allows for a 2 GB size, whereas the SQL Express as well as the local DB can be up to 10 GB in size. And of course, if you have the full server version, you can go much larger. But so the size difference is another factor in favor of SQL Express or local DB. Now, in terms of concurrent connections, this is a little bit difficult to understand, but because local DB and SQL Express are basically on a personal computer, the operating system of the personal computer basically limits it to 10 people or 10 concurrent connections. With MX Access, that's also true if it's on a PC, but if you put that file on a file share or server, then you could have 255 potential concurrent users, but realistically, the system's more in the 10 to 20 range. Some people even advocate using it for a small website development. However, I would be quite reluctant to use Microsoft Access for that. Now let's take a look also at record locking. In Microsoft SQL Express and local DB, you have a very granular optimistic locking, so that we're basically locking just that record that we're working with at the time to update. If we're in a read-only mode, that doesn't even occur. Now with MS Access, sometimes we even have a full database or table lockout, and it also has pessimistic type of locking, which means that there's a little bit different on how it reacts. Now this can be adjusted in Microsoft Access, but the default is for no particular record locking. Now the access in a SQL Express or local DB, of course, is on the client side on a personal computer. But as you migrate your database to a larger environment, it becomes a client-server environment, and therefore you're looking at everything that you do and develop in a local DB or SQL Express environment being able to be migrated easily to a full version of a client access server using the regular Microsoft SQL Server edition. Now Microsoft Access uses a special kind of access called the Microsoft Jet 4.0 database engine. This is for the older versions of Microsoft Access. The newer versions use the Microsoft Access Database Engine 2010, or sometimes called ACE version 14 on that being used. Now migration, as I said, is very easy, coming from SQL Express and local DB to the full SQL Server, or the cloud version. Azure would be another way you could go with that, but it's easy to migrate because everything's the same, the language is the same. MS Access requires some customized migration, and you basically would have to redevelop your code and update it to migrate it into a regular SQL environment. So there are some differences, but let me also say MS Access is one that a lot of people have. They're familiar with it, they're comfortable with it, and for personal use and very small office type use, it would be an acceptable package to use. So we will use that to get started, and then we'll migrate on over to use the SQL Express and local DB. Now let's take a look at one of the other issues that happen while we're working with Microsoft Access. A lot of times you might have a situation where you have the 32-bit Microsoft Office installed in your system, but you're running a computer that's a 64-bit type computer, and you're also wanting to use the utilities of the 64-bit. Which is the case that I have. I have a Windows 7 Professional installed, and I had some problems with it initially. I found that this article to go out to is an excellent guide to help if you have any trouble not being able to run the ACE engine. And you can download also the current ones as of the time I'm creating this video if for your 64-bit usage to work with. And this tells you how to get this to work together. So if you have any problems as you begin to do some connecting to Visual Basic to the Access database file, this might be an area you want to take a look at. So I advise you to pause the video and take a look at this, or come back to the video later on if you do have some problems, so you can take a look at the link and go out and find that information. So let's go on now and get into our Microsoft Access and begin the process of using it for development. So I have Microsoft Access 2010 opened up. And we're going to create a blank database, and this is going to be a very simple one. So first of all, I'm going to go out to the file name area where I'm going to store this and click on the folder, and it'll bring up the Explorer, and I'm going to go to a location that I have on my U drive, where I like to store things. I have a database folder, and there I have my access database area. So I'm going to store it there, and I'm going to call this a database sample DB. On that, so we're going to have a name called sampledb.accdb, and that's the name of our database file. And it's going to say OK. You'll see it here, and then I'm going to hit the create. And we begin with the creating of the table, and what I'm going to do is change my view to design view on that, and I'm going to make my name of this table customers table. Okay. Now I'm in the design view of the customer table, and you can see over here you can change the views, but right now I'm in the design view. We're going to create the fields, or I should say the columns that are going to be in our database. So I'm going to start out with a customer ID, and it's going to be an auto number field, which means it'll generate automatically the number starting at 1 that I'm going to have as it grows, and it'll be our primary key to make this particular record that we have in our database always unique. Then I'm going to have customer name, and this is going to be a text data type, but I don't need it to be 255. I'm going to change the size down to 35, which is normally an address label, and that's sort of why I use that size. Then the next one I'm going to have is the customer contact. Once again, it's going to be text, and I'm going to make it 35 as well in size. And the last thing I'll put in here is phone, and I'll make that also a text, and for the phone we'll make it only 15 in size. Okay, so we've got our customer table defined, very simple. We're not going to make it too complex for sake of making it easy to understand and learn. Okay, I'm going to hit a save at this point. Now I'm going to create another table on that. So I'm going to close this one out and start another table. And this time I'm going to come up to create table. And this table I'm going to switch over to the design view and give it a name, in this case of orders. And this is a very poor order table that I'm going to be making. Basically, I just want a few fields to give you an idea. Normally, you would have an order header table and an order detail table to create a full orders type of environment. But we're going to have a simple one called orders, and the first one will be order ID, which will make it a unique, and it once again will be auto number on that and our primary key. The next one will be our customer ID, and I'm spelling it exactly like I have it in the customer table. This will be a foreign key to this one, and this one will not be a text but a number. So I'm going to change that to number, and you'll see it'll be a long integer for number on that because I had it as an auto number field in the customer table. And we'll see how that customer ID plays as a foreign key in a little bit. Then I'm going to have order date, and that'll give us a date field. So I'm going to make that a date time field. And the last one I'm going to put in here is order quantity. And normally this would not be in the order header part, but actually in the detail of a line item. But for this one, we're just going to make it in here so we can have another field to work with. And once again, I'm just going to make this a long integer for this. So I have order ID, customer ID, order date, and quantity. And I made certain the customer ID is spelled exactly the same as my key in the customer table. and also I've defined it to be the same type, which is in this case a long integer on that, just like the auto number field in order ID is on that. So we'll have this one create automatically a number as we add records, and then we'll put in the customer ID from the customer table, and also we'll add the date and quantity. Now truly a good database would also have some constraints, but we're going to keep it very simple with those. So I'm going to save that information. Now I'm going to switch our view now to, I'm going to go back to the customer and go to the area here where I have the regular view of it, and I'm going to actually start to enter in things. Now, since this is an auto number field, I do not need to enter in anything here. I'll let the system add it automatically. So I'm going to add some customers to get us started. I'm sorry, not, I want to get the customers table. There we go. Let me open it. There we go. Now we got the customers table up, and we'll start with getting the customers in. The first one I'll call a widget company, and the customer contact is George Sprocket, and we'll give a phone number of 555-555-1212. We'll come to the next one and add a Gadget Enterprises. Gadget Enterprise. And the name will be Mike Griffin. And his phone number will be 555-555-123. Whoops, put a dash in there. 1234. And the third one I'll put in is Jigs are us. And I'm going to make Sally Peterson contact, and the phone number will be 555-555, and we'll make it 989876 for a phone number. So we've got 3 customer numbers in. Let me slide this over a little bit so you can see it better. Get the line there. There we go. Now you can see it better. Okay, so there are my 3 customer fields in there for my table. Widget Company, Gadget Enterprises, and Thingamajigs Are Us, with the contact names and the phones. That takes care of that one. Now let's go to the orders table, and let's take a look in the orders table, and I'll switch over here, and here we'll add in the information for the actual line items. And for this one I'll use 1 for the customer ID, and notice the order number created automatically. I'm going to give the first one the date of 7/21/2015, and the order amount is 125. The next one I'll put in as 7/28/2015. Whoops. That's not the same ID. And let's put that number back in. 7/28/2015. And this time we'll have 200. Another 1 for customer 1. And this time we'll put in 8/4/2015 for our date. And we'll put in 125 for this one. Next time we're going to have another order. We're going to put in for customer number 2, and we're going to use the date of August 15th. 2015, and that person ordered 200. The next one will be for customer 3, and the date will be July 22nd, 2015, and we'll put in 50 for this one. The next one will still be customer number 3, and we'll use the date of July 29th, 2015, and we'll put in 75 for the amount. And the last one we'll put in for this one is customer 3 again, and we'll use August 5th, 2015, and we'll put in the amount of 100. Okay, so now we've got in place our customer IDs for our orders, the dates they ordered it, the quantities that they ordered for those on that. So we've got it all set. Okay, let's save that information. Now I'm going to close these out, and now I want to go over to the database tools area, and you'll see relationships. I'm going to click on the relationship button, and I'm going to highlight, holding down my control key, both the customers and orders, and hit add and close out the button. Then I'm going to go to the customer ID here, and I'm going to drag from the customer ID over to the customer ID of the orders table and release. And we'll see the edit relationship occur, and you'll see that the table is customers with the customer ID selected, and the related table is orders with the customer ID selected on that. And I'm going to enforce referential integrity, which means that these two tables will exist, and we'll have what's called a foreign key in the orders table that will relate to the customer table. And I could go ahead and add the cascade update and delete options. We'll do that though in the Visual Basic program later on, but you'll see that my relationship is one-to-many, and I'm going to say create. And you'll see that the 1 is on the customer side where I started from and dragged over to the order side where you see the little infinity, which means it's one-to-many. And so this one relates to this one. This is what's called the foreign key that points back to the customer table on that. So we've got a relationship defined between these two tables. I'm going to hit close. And do you want to save the changes? And I say yes. And now we've got it all set. And we've got our table already defined and ready to go for our next time around. So I'm going to hit File Close at this point and close out my database. And we'll get back into working with this database, the sample DB database in Microsoft Access, and learn how to bring it into a Visual Basic program the next time. So get your database all created, ready to go, and go out to Pastebin, and you'll see there the information about that table that I just created. It is a very poor table in one sense, but I wanted to give you a parent-child type of table, customer to orders, with a relationship established between them, so you can see how that is done. And as we get into working with Visual Basic, you'll see that done more and appreciate that customer-child relationship and how to create a foreign key with another table. So until next time, get your hands dirty in the code, get out there, create your database, get it all set to go, and we'll get working on the next one in just a few minutes. Take care.